Imagine this. You step outside your front door for just another walk, and 63 miles later, you've crossed an entire metropolis, walking past steel mills and refineries, toxic fields, and wild prairies, quiet neighborhoods, abandoned streets, and then you realize the walk has changed far more than your body. It's changed the way you see your city, it's changed the way you see other people, it's changed the way you see yourself. What if your daily walk wasn't just about getting your steps in, but about healing anxiety and depression, about reclaiming your health after an HIV diagnosis, about bearing witness to inequality, and at the same time, discovering unexpected pockets of beauty and nature hidden in plain sight? In today's episode, I'm talking with author Michael McColly about his book, Walking Chicago's Coastline, a 63-mile journey to the Indiana Dunes. A powerful story of pilgrimage, mental health, environmental justice, and the quiet revolution that happens when we choose to walk where we live. Let's begin. All right, so welcome to the Walking for Health and Fitness podcast. My guest today is author Michael McColly. Michael's essays and journalism have appeared in the New York Times, the Chicago Tribune, the Sun Magazine, the Boston Review, Marshlands Press, Chicago Review, and other journals and anthologies. He has been a lecturer in creative nonfiction in Northwestern University's master's program in creative writing, and at Columbia College he has also taught in Indiana's state prison system. Now, the rest of Michael's impressive resume will be in the blog post of this episode and at his website, michaelmccolly.net. Okay? His newest work and why he's here is Walking Chicago's Coastline, a 63-mile journey to the Indiana Dunes, and chronicles an improbable pilgrimage from his doorstep across the metropolis of Chicago. Now, it blends a memoir, travelogue, and environmental reportage. He reflects on the city's history, its stark inequalities, its natural wonder, and on the transformative benefits of walking where we live. So, welcome, Michael. Thank you for being here. So please let's start off with a little background about yourself.
Sure. Thanks for having me, Frank. It's a pleasure, and I'm interested in what you do as well, because I think the subject of walking is so vast and so important these days, I think. And my background, where do I begin? I grew up in Indiana in a small factory town, somewhat like some of the area that I walked through, which was part of my interest in walking through an area that some people may not think is the greatest place to walk, and that is through industrial areas of Chicago and Northwest Indiana. For some people who don't know Northwest Indiana and the South Side of Chicago, it's an area that was once a major industrial area. It still is. There are 3 massive steel plants in that area, and a lot of manufacturing, some steel mills, but also British Petroleum has a large refinery. But I grew up in a town that had some manufacturing, and it collapsed, as many places did around the country. So I have that background. I am a former Peace Corps volunteer in Africa, where I did a lot of walking. I actually credit that experience where I did walks to get my mail, every other day, maybe 8 or 9 miles to get the mail, and also do my work. So I went to divinity school, thinking that I was going to be a minister at one point, and then went back and got my master's degree in creative writing. And so I taught for many years in Chicago, teaching English as a second language, and then I went ahead and started teaching creative writing and publishing some of my writings. So that's sort of what I've been doing. I've lived in Chicago for about 40 years, on and off, and I guess I'm a Chicagoan,
Yeah,
Midwesterner, for sure.
you're finally considered local, right?
Right? Yeah,
That's interesting.
takes a while.
In preparing for this, just quickly, I saw you had talked about originally walking in through London. Is that correct?
I did lots of walking in Great Britain. Yeah, I've
Okay.
been there a few times and walked around London for sure, around Paris. Yep.
Okay, so that'll now lead us to Rick, like the start of your journey towards this book. What got you, once you were in Chicago and you've been living there a while, what got you into walking with the idea of writing about it?
Well, yeah. I mean, I had been doing a lot of walks in Arizona and the West. I mean, I've been a hiker for years in sort of natural areas, and I also began. I also dealt with depression, and I live with HIV. So there was a period of my life about 30 years ago when I contracted HIV that I really began to do a lot of walking. It really helped me. And many people with chronic diseases, as you know, they find that they need to actively engage in doing some exercise, some doing things to get out. And so walking, like swimming too was very important to me, were these modes of actively doing things with my body so that I could feel like I was in charge of my own health. And walking was certainly one. And so I began to do a lot of walking, and then I began to write about it and how important it was. And so I wrote some essays about it, and then I was in Great Britain, and I was going to write about that. And then I came back to Chicago after hiking for a month in Great Britain. And I just told myself, I am not ready to sit back down in my apartment and get ready to teach. I want to keep this going. It was so valuable for me to do this walking. And so I thought, I'm going to walk across Chicago. I got 5 days before I teach. I'm not sitting back down. And so that was how it started.
Okay, so you're back in Chicago. Before you teach, you're going to start walking for the 5 days. Is that when you covered the 63 miles of that you wrote about?
Right. I came back
good.
and I had the idea, and I told myself, if you don't do it, you will never do it. You're in shape. You're just, you're in the mind of the traveler. When you go on a vacation, you kind of have this. It's a different self that doesn't want to go away, and so that traveler self wanted to keep going, and so I went ahead and looked out where I was going to have to walk. And then the next day I went off and did it. In fact, I did it in 2 days, not 5 days. So,
Okay, so 2 days you did the 63 miles. All right.
Right.
So, step back. Just like you said, you mapped it out. Tell me about that. I'm asking because I love doing that. When I'm out on my walks, especially if I have a day where I have more time, I love to just first look at a map quick, just to have an idea of where I'm going. So tell me, what was that like? The prep work of that.
Yeah.
That's the part. That's the part I enjoy. Like, oh, I've never been over here. Let me do this.
Yeah, I did too. I looked on the map, and I got a physical map. I'm a map person. I didn't just go to Google. I had that map, and I got my little finger, and checked out exactly where I was going to go, because I wanted to stay along Chicago's coast. In other words, there's a large, if you know Chicago, the city is about 25 miles long, and there's a lakefront park that's about 19 miles. And so I knew that I had that. I said, well, I've got 19 miles that I can walk. But then once I get to the end of the city and I cross into Indiana, it's going to be different. I'm going to go through neighborhoods. I'm going to go through areas that many people would say would not be a place to go and take a walk, whether
Right.
it's not safe or because the streets are um, full of different areas where they are the industrial area is ruins, and then there's highways, and there's it's not a pleasant, so-called pleasant place to hike. So, but I also wanted to get to the Indiana Dunes, which was around the lake, which is a national park. So I actually got in my car and drove it first
Okay.
to see, and then I said I can do it.
Interesting. All right. I like that. I like that. Well, like I said, I love the planning, the planning part. So you just talked about these areas that the undesirable areas. I mean, you wouldn't think of, well, this is a place where I'm going to walk through. I mean, when you think of walking, you think of, or I think of that, the walk along the beach, the coastline of Chicago, along the lake. So what in those industrial areas, those less than desirable areas, what surprised you the most when you actually were walking along those places
Well,
and did those walks?
I've done a lot of walking in cities and things like that too, but I looked at people's houses, and sometimes you see, well, this isn't a great neighborhood, but then you see one house with really interesting gardens. Your perceptions are really awakened when you walk. As you know, you begin to notice things, and even though
Yes.
some areas were neglected, and frankly, a lot of what I saw was the effects of years of neglect and economic neglect and environmental degradation because of companies come in and they leave a mess because they don't have the money to clean it up, and they've perhaps been cited by the Environmental Protection Agency, but they just go bankrupt. And so you have all kinds of toxic fields and brown fields and empty lands that I'd seen from the highway for years, but I just wanted to go and see them up close. And there's beauty there too. There were all kinds of birds, and I noticed just sort of the natural prairie in some areas, because in some parts of Chicago there are these lands that have never been developed, so they're part of what was here 300 years ago. So it was fascinating to go between toxic areas and then some nature areas in which some conservationists have kept alive. So it was interesting. Yeah.
Yeah, that's one area I find fascinating, that people, when people take action in these areas to fix them up, to rehabilitate the different areas like that. And it's too bad that our government and local government doesn't take the responsibility. It's always, always seems to be a grassroots endeavor
Right.
to, hey, let's get the ball rolling here. This should be a beautiful area, and it's not. And then you need someone to spearhead that. So you actually saw that on the ground, which you, like you said, you don't see that if you're just driving by.
Yeah, I mean, this is an area that people drive by on expressways. You would not go down into some of the areas where industrial lands, and some areas are cordoned off because railroad companies own it, or there used to be the ruins of a cement factory, or there's an old casino where I actually stayed, and it had fallen. Actually, our president, it was his first casino in Indiana, and he had this, and I actually spent. I mean, it was not closed when I went there. It has subsequently closed, but it was just a lot of areas of Indiana that has been abandoned,
Okay.
and some areas have come back naturally on their own, and
Right.
others have been helped by local organizations.
Okay.
But yeah, on the ground, it was a totally different world. Uh, and of course, about 20 miles of Lake Michigan is unaccessible because of an industry over the years. British Petroleum has a massive refinery, and then U.S. Steel has a large plant, and then there's some other brownfields, and they're guarded by security.
Right. So the security measures, you can't get to the nicest view of the lake. You have to look at their whole industrial complex. So with the book being published, it's out on Amazon now. Has anyone from these local communities reached out to you as far as, hey, you brought some attention. Can we keep the ball rolling here?
Yeah, yes, indeed, people have, and I will be talking with a friend actually that I've got to know because he helped me with some of the research on the book because he took me to some other areas. He lives in Gary, Indiana, and he does a podcast himself about various natural pockets around all of these industrial sites. So he introduced me to many others and also to some other organizations and what they're doing. And we're going to speak at a couple different meetings of groups of people. A few people have told me stories about growing up in certain cities in Indiana and the south
Okay.
side of Chicago and what it used to be like, and the levels of pollution and how bad it was and still is because of the toxic particulate matter that comes and falls on people's cars and picnic tables, and this is part of industrial cities. As I don't know how old you are, but there are certain cities that have over the years have always had a lot of pollution, and people have just lived with them because, of course, it's their livelihood.
Yeah, it's funny. You were just talking about the particulates, right? I'm 62 years old, so I remember. I guess it would be late 60s, early 70s, more so. Just the levels of pollution in, I guess, in and around those industrial areas. And I'm thinking of like Pittsburgh. I think there was a river that was on fire, whether it was Pittsburgh or Cleveland or one of those places. So I
Yeah,
think of that. But now, jumping ahead so many years later, they look better. They look
they
cleaner. They
do.
look neater. I know I'm just off of not far from the Hudson River in outside of New York City. It looks beautiful here, but I know the underneath all of that, there's still so much toxic material that is just kind of been left. We'll just leave it alone in a sense, and you don't realize it until I know there was a place in Edgewater where they built like a strip mall and housing and all of this, but right underneath it is an arsenic dump,
Right.
which
Yeah.
they didn't remediate. They got around some environmental thing about it, so we don't. It looks nice, but then when you read a little bit, it's like, whoa, I don't know if I'd buy a house here.
Yeah, well, that's been part of the problem in certain industrial cities like Gary. People left the city because of the pollution, and it's really hard to rebuild there because of the remediation that costs money, and then people don't want to actually buy property there because many of the houses have fallen down. So it's a cycle that's really hard unless the federal government or the state comes in and does the remediation or or tears down old factories or old neighborhoods where
Yeah.
people's houses are just left abandoned. And in Gary, there's there's trees that have grown in neighborhoods. I mean, 30, 40
Wow.
year old trees, because this is
Wow.
when it began to collapse in the 80s.
So,
So it's a
so I'm
interesting.
sorry.
It's an interesting environment in the sense that things have grown back, but it's still areas that are toxic. So you can't really do anything there unless you do the remediation.
Sure. All right. So bringing this back to the walking, when you walked through these areas that have been in disrepair now, did you meet other people walking? Were there people out and about, or are people mostly like in these areas, like, kind of shut into their homes, or there's just not many people living there?
All of the above there. There
Okay.
was, I saw some walkers coming out of a, kind of a, kind of a grocery store that was partly a gas station, and I thought, wow, they're going to their car, and no, they were walking, I don't know, a mile or so back to their house somewhere. I couldn't see where their house was,
Right.
but this was a classic food desert in the sense that there are no places for people to buy food because the city has, uh, you know, um, decreased the numbers of businesses so much that the only you can get food at certain gas stations.
Wow.
And then it was somewhat of a warm day, and so people weren't out. And it's also, as I said, a lot of homes and neighborhoods have so declined that there's not a lot of people living there. So most people were in
Wow.
their cars. Yeah.
Okay. Interesting. So this book, you cover that. You write about this walk from your doorstep to the Indiana dunes. What are the Indiana dunes like? What do they look like
Well,
when you
the
get there?
dunes, yeah, the dunes are extraordinary sand dunes that are some of them up to 150 feet tall, and there's areas of uh, woodlands, and there's marshes, a lot of marshlands, beautiful area, and uh, the biodiversity is some of the highest biodiversity in the Midwest. All kinds of plants that you wouldn't find anywhere else. There's cacti from the Southwest that seem somehow does well on these sand dunes, and then there are plants from the the boreal forest of Canada that do well on these dunes. So it's very unusual plant life there, and of course there's some you know. Beautiful homes in certain areas along along these dunes, but the local people there have created a state park and also a national park in the 1960s, which thank God they did, because more industrial plants probably would have been built, because that was the era. The era was, what is this? It's just sand and marshland. We just fill this in. We don't need this. Let's just use this to build a 6 mile long U.S. steel plant. It was not seen as valuable land. And of course, it was the extraordinary marshlands. I mean, if you remember in the past, Americans didn't really think swamps and marshlands were of any value at all, and they needed to be drained. And
Right.
so,
Right.
fortunately, in the '60s, they began to save certain pockets of it. So there are, 5 miles of dune here, and then five more over here. So it's a patchwork kind of a national park. It's a very small national park. but a beautiful one, and within 60 miles of Chicago. And so
Yeah.
I've always wondered if we need a trail there, I think, because some people are starting to build one, as a matter of fact. So
Oh, that's from Chicago
from
to
Chicago, yeah, and it's mostly
that's
bikers have done it,
yeah.
a lot, but I've said, well, I think walkers want to do this too, and where will they go? So they're in the process of creating it.
Oh,
They didn't follow my
fantastic.
trail, but they have something in the works.
Right. I've in the last 2 3 years I've started doing more biking along with walking, and these rail trails have been
Right.
they're all over the country, which is a great way to be safe. You're not on the highway on the roads. I've walked them, I've biked them, and something like that. A rail trail from Chicago to the Indiana Dunes would really be
I
an
walked on
a
part of a rail
great.
trail. I walked on about a mile and a half. There was a rail to trail section I walked on. It's called Marquette Trail,
Okay.
and that's what they're hoping to extend to Chicago and all the way up to Michigan, as a matter of fact. So
Wow,
it's not
beautiful.
just to the Indiana Dunes, but all the way to the border.
Okay.
So yeah,
So I want to talk to you about the writing process, but then
sure.
and then get back into general walking questions. So the writing process. Did you leave when you when you planned this out? Was it with the intention of I'm writing a book about this, or is it? Well, tell me, what was the intention?
As I mentioned, I had written essays about walking in Arizona, walking and with my mother who had Alzheimer's on the Appalachian Trail. So there were several essays I've written about walking, its benefits, of course, its benefits to my health, and so I kind of knew that this will be an interesting subject to write about. But I had no idea it would be a book. I just thought it'd be an essay about, well, hey, I walked, through the city, and this is what I found. I actually did not believe I would make it. I thought I would walk to the, to the edge of the city, like 20 miles. I didn't
Okay.
think I would make it all the way. So yeah, several people told me who were writers. They said, "No, Mike, this is a book. This is not an essay," and they were right. Yeah.
Yeah, that's it. I love that part you just said about you didn't think you would finish, but it's almost like you had a greater deep down you knew there was a greater purpose to this than
I
just
did.
yeah, yeah. One thing I love about walking and just being intentional with it is that when you have an intention when you're out there to walk, it carries you forward, and it turns it into something else. People tell me, like when they know how much I walk, they'll say, "Oh, it's so boring," and I'm like, "Oh my gosh, you've never done it then," because it's the biggest creative outlet I think that you can have, just being out alone with your thoughts and surrounded by nature or surrounded by industrial areas, which give you ideas that go into a different direction.
Absolutely. I think, this is what walking does. It triggers our perceptions. And our body, our mind, we're very hungry for sensual engagement. I mean, that's just how we're built as
Yeah.
creatures. We want to be engaged and smell and see and feel, and so when we walk, no matter where we walk, we are the antenna comes out, and we engage, and our brain starts thinking all kinds of things because we're stimulated. And this is what I find when I do these walks. So it doesn't matter where our bodies are eager to absorb, and I think that's why our mental well-being is changed. I think our mood changed because we are creative in our walking. Perception is an act of creation, really, when you think about it, because we're making we're making meaning as we walk. And so absolutely, I agree with what goes on while we are in this process of moving across the landscape.
Oh, yes, absolutely. So getting to the writing. So at what point, like, your friend said, "Hey, this is not an essay. This is a book." How long did it take you to gather your materials, your thoughts? Were you taking notes while you were walking? When I walk, I have the notes app on my iPhone, and
Right.
random thoughts I just record right away, because when I sit at my desk, I'll sit here. I'm like, what was that thing I thought about? Totally blank until I go look at my notes app. So were you doing the same type of thing?
Initially I kind of thought, well, let me write that down and things like that. I just gave up. I
Oh.
took photographs of things, but I didn't write things down, and I don't write things down when I do longer walks.
Okay.
I wait till I'm done and write in a journal or notebook.
Okay.
And it's
Interesting.
just, I just feel like if it's really important, I'll remember it, and it's just the way I am. So.
Yeah.
And a lot of people ask me that question. Believe me, did you write all this down? I mean, my God. And I think if people who write a lot and nonfiction, and this is what I would talk about with students, is that your memory starts getting more and more in tuned when you write more and more. So one memory brings out another and another and another, and it's a practice. So your memory is increased when you use it. And so I think that's when I got done. I wrote for several days in a row. I just kept writing everything that I remembered. And
Awesome.
yeah.
So yeah, so I get it's that repetition of that process that works for you, and the more you've done it, if you've been a writer your whole life, just triggers it for you to do even more so than like I said, I like to do it right in the
Oh, sure.
moment.
Yeah. I mean, with phones, we can do all kinds of stuff these days.
Yeah,
I,
sure.
uh, I
So
just keep going, and I mean, there were so many pictures. I felt like I could use those, and but yeah.
very good. Okay, so how long did it take to once you started writing? You said you wrote for several days, but then how long is that process of writing a book, like between you actually doing it, editing, and getting it
Oh
out
yeah,
into the marketplace?
really several years, really, because
Wow.
there was COVID.
Okay.
There was, I published some things from the book after a couple years, and then my mother was dealing with Alzheimer's, and I went and helped my sisters with her care.
Wow. Okay.
And that took and I worked on it, but it took time from away from the writing, and so that took some time, and then there was a couple different publishers, and then they got interested, and then they dropped it, and then another one got interested and dropped it. Yeah, few years, yeah,
Wow.
several years, eight
So
or
one
years.
thing
Yeah.
you're a persistent person for
Yeah,
sure.
I am. I am. I knew this was a valuable, book, and I think the longer you do it too, you said, "By God, it's gonna get done." So yeah. I
So
mean, one of the things that I really felt compelled me was that you know, seeing the environmental degradation and bearing witness to, those people that have to live in these environments really made me feel that I owed it to myself and to these people to kind of finish this book, because I really saw something, and I wanted other people to see that, and I wanted to make a point, because, as I mentioned, I grew up in a city kind of like that, and I feel like people have been ignored or forgotten, and I think that's helped me finish it, because people can easily be neglected, and they're out of not in the limelight, or they're struggling, and certain areas of America, as you know, have just been neglected, and so I think that helped me kind of get over the line.
Yeah, sure. Having a greater purpose, and that is looking out for other people for sure. Does
Yeah.
that. Well, that is fantastic. What has the reviews of the book been like?
Well, there hasn't been a lot
Response?
yet. I mean, it came
Okay.
out in October, so I
Okay.
mean,
So
I'm still hoping to get them.
yeah.
I'm curious to see. Yeah, I mean, I think generally it's been good, and people have appreciated um, the observations. I think a lot of people have been very interested in the 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 view of the city on foot. I think a lot of people
Mm,
know where they live because they have lived, in a city for years, but they don't know it on the ground
mm,
over miles and miles,
right.
and neighborhood by neighborhood. A
Hmm.
lot of people, say, "Oh, I grew up here, my family's from here, and all that," but they've never been in that neighborhood, or
Right.
they've never
Right.
really walked through a certain area, and so it has interested people because of the areas that I went through, that they had not seen up close. And
Mm,
of course, we've talked about the industrial area, a lot of people are very curious about what it was like walking in those particular parts of the metropolis.
sure.
So yeah,
Sure.
that's been a lot of the interest of the book.
Okay.
But walking, as you know too, is just such a right now it's a very popular subject. People are
Mm,
so interested in what happens to us when we walk, and everyone's got walking stories now, and they
mm.
want to talk about it. So I think it's just very interesting to people, especially after COVID. There was a lot of walking discovery. A lot of people realized that they can walk through their neighborhoods and go, "My God, I really love walking around my own neighborhood."
Mm.
And
Uh,
it's like, yeah, sure.
yeah. I started my walking journey after a back injury. So I started
Okay.
walking a lot in 2000, end of 2016, recovering from my back, recovering from my mom had passed away. So
Mm-hmm.
once I got out walking, it just felt good physically. I needed that to be moving
Sure.
again. And also my mindset was like, I'd get out and I'm like, whoa, I like this. This feels great. I was a runner beforehand. That's how I had gotten injured for the most part. And I
Mm.
never, running, I did it to keep in shape. I can't ever say I ever enjoyed it, but it was something. I was
Yeah.
hurt all the time, but I thought, well, I
Yeah.
coached runners. My runners were always small. My legs are sore, this, that, the other thing. It's part of running. Once I started
Right.
walking, it was like, oh, I enjoy this. And before I would start looking at, hey, where am I going to walk today? And I would plan it out, and that's what I really liked about walking. So during COVID, I just continued my routine, but I saw so many more people that I had never seen before out walking. And this is one of the questions I had. When you walk in general, do you wave to people?
I do. Yeah, I do. I think
Okay.
this is part of what is happens. I think it's like, oh, I'm a part of the city now, and I can connect with people, and it's okay. We also have the time too, and I think sidewalks are very public places where we
Mm-hmm.
feel like this is a civic connection that we have for the fraction of time that we see people. And I do like to wave or say hi and whatever, and it makes me feel good. I'm more interested in people, rather than drive around and worry about where I'm going, and how quickly I can get there. So
Yeah. That
I
I
think it's
found the same
healthy in
thing.
that way. Yeah.
Yeah, I found the same thing. I have more of a connection when I'm out on walking the pavement and waving. Funny story I told other times. During COVID, I seen a man, a neighbor, what lived about a mile from me. he was walking every day, and we're on opposite sides of the street, and I'd wave, and he had his headphones on, looking down, and you could see he's someone who had just started walking. He was overweight, and I'm like, this guy, either he doesn't see me or he's being rude or whatever it was. But I don't think it was such an odd, I think, for him to wave to someone. So every day I'd wave. And finally one day I saw his hand, I got this little thing. And then I'm like, all right, I'm getting to him. And the next time I was down the block, and now he sees me coming, and we stopped. We started talking to each other, became friendly. And that's why I had asked about the waving. And I had walked in one neighborhood where it was a wealthy area. Streets were wide, no cars on the street because everybody had big driveways. And people would wave. They were in their cars waving to me as they drove by. And I'm like,
Good.
okay, I like that. I usually wave to cars. Cars get this if they give me a little room. If I see them moving over, that's like, I feel it's good karma for me.
Good.
I like
Yeah.
to do that, and people you got to see these surprise looks when they wave back. Like,
Well, yeah, I mean, this is why there's a benefit to walking for social cohesion.
Yes.
And it sounds like a romantic idea, but I think we know that we live and we're a part of a community when we're walking. We've sensed that. We have to watch out for bikes and cars, but we're just more engaged rather than in our head or removed. We're apart, and we're also on the land. We're all and we go by stores and we go by people's homes, and there's a unconscious feeling that we're a part of a community, and I think that's very healthy.
Yeah. Oh, for sure.
I really do.
A
Yeah.
different connection. Where I walk now, there's a family they're always out on their porch, and it's nice to pass by and chat with them and get to know them. Something that, again, if you're driving by, you just don't see that. So
Yeah.
that's really a great thing. In your on this, well, let's on your trip. I'm sorry, on this journey, from Chicago to the dunes. What is there something that surprised you most, like something that really jumped out at you that maybe you didn't expect?
Well, I think you mentioned a little bit earlier about walking has a kind of an intentional aspect to it. I did have that feeling like, well, I'm making an intended walk here. I'm not just doing this for exercise. I'm kind of wanting to get to the dunes. It's an important place for me. So I had a feeling of being on a pilgrimage in a way. So my perceptions were beginning to change. And I had this feeling of history that I was really surprised that I had so much. It was almost like my imagination start working. Like, what was here before? And of course, these buildings are older, and this is a site where something happened. And so my sense of history really was triggered, and I was like, wow, this is I didn't think this would happen. And I'd look at buildings a couple times when I was in the downtown area, and I would look and I go, wow, just how many people worked on that building to build it, which you kind of can think about every once in a while, but I had the time to think about it, and I began to sort of really appreciate the craftsmanship of buildings and the bridge work, and I just had and I also, there were areas in the city where there was a famous Chicago had racial riots in the 1919, and there was a place along the lakefront where it began, where there was a terrible stoning of a young black boy, and because he had floated over a partition in the lake where certain group of people could swim in this area and the black community over here, and this kid sort of floated over, and they started throwing rocks at him, and he drowned.
Oh, gee.
and that started a 2 or 3 days of riots. And it was just I knew the story, and then I just got to that place, and I just really felt it. And I
Mm,
thought, wow, is that because I'm on this pilgrimage, or why? Why did I have that feeling?
mm,
And I had it a couple other places too. So
mm.
that was interesting.
Yeah, it's interesting. You just said the word in this explanation, time. Um, People tell me, "Oh, yeah, walking. I take some. I don't have the time to walk," but I've always felt that my walking time kind of gives me more time. All this all the thinking time, the creative time, and then it kind of kept me in order for other things in my life, which then saved me time on the other end. I'll say that, and
Sure.
there's just so much going on when we're out there, step by step, and physically being active, and then outdoors, and like you said, you talked about the buildings. Like there are so many things. I just moved into a new area where I'm looking at older buildings, like, oh, that's interesting. They don't make them like that anymore.
Right,
Yeah,
right.
yeah.
Yeah, and you can see, like I say, people's gardens and little areas of creativity
Mm,
that you just don't notice. I
yeah,
mean, people, they have little displays in people's windows,
yeah.
and that no one sees except if you're walking on a
Except,
sidewalk, and you kind of go, somebody has taken all this effort into
mm,
making a kind of display in their front window,
yeah.
and I don't know. I just it was enlightening, and it was joyful, really, to
Yeah,
see
great
human
word.
creativity. Yeah,
Yeah, great
yeah,
word, joyful. Occasionally on my Instagram account, I'll post something like things I see on my walk, and it's that. It's someone who built this little, whether it's a statue they put up in their yard, which again, if you're driving by, you don't see it, but that is so, it meant something to them to put it there. And
right.
I'd like to
Yeah.
acknowledge that. Yeah. Wow.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
Really fascinating. Getting back, like, we talk, both of you and I talk about our walks.
Right.
How long is your walk? Do you keep like a mileage chart of your walks? So, like, generally, you go out for a walk. Is it 2, 3 miles, an hour, 2 hours? Because I have all different types of walks, but I'm just trying to give the people listening, some kind of sense when we talk about a walk. Like when you talk about a walk, what's the duration? Now, not this big long
Not
walk.
this one.
Yeah,
Yeah.
to put
Yeah.
this
I
one
know.
aside. Yeah.
I know what you
You
mean. Yeah.
we finish up here, and you're like, hey, it's a nice day here. Let me get outside. Like, what's a walk like for you?
Yeah, I do some walks, I 4 or 5 miles,
Mm-hmm.
and go out, and I mean, I need to get out, and so I will, take my time and get out there, and I mean, sometimes I go swimming at the YMCA, and it's 2 miles away, and I'll walk over there and walk
Mm-hmm.
back, but I purposely sort of set out because I do need some mileage. I really do, and I think things happen when you go a little bit further than a couple of miles.
Mm,
Something changes when
yeah.
you go a little bit further. So shorter walks are okay, but I want a little bit longer ones.
Mm,
But I don't count. I don't really count, or I say, well, I got to do 2 hours or something.
mm,
It's just whatever
yeah.
I feel like it. But
Yeah, I have my milestones of I like 4 is the nice sweet spot. That's like I feel like I'm good here. 5, and then I moved in the last year, and my old place where I was, my old area, I had these nice 7 and 10 mile walks that had a coffee shop in between. I have it
good.
here, but I haven't done the long walks. I'm recovering. I just finished radiation treatment for prostate cancer, and the
Oh,
mistake I made during treatment was I was tired a lot. I didn't get out as much as I should have. And
mm,
now that I'm starting to come around, I'm actually now getting out there more and feeling better. So it's that catch
good.
22 of where I should have been out there walking. Oh, I'm too tired, the treatment, but I'm starting to feel better now, and I'm finding that sweet spot. So yeah, I just wanted to have give the listeners an idea when we talk miles, but I think 4 to 5 is my sweet spot. I love that.
Yeah, yeah, that's true. And good for you to, getting back out there after a health a situation. I know prostate, is something that older men are all dealing with. I've
Mm.
been tested
Yeah.
recently, and
Yeah.
it's an issue that a lot of people need to get tested, and
Yeah.
and
Get
find out,
get that PSA test, get the ball rolling, just know your number. That's what I tell everyone. And during it there were things I knew to do and I didn't. So I'm actually transforming some of what I'm doing online towards that to help other people. So
Great,
that's
great,
coming up quite shortly. So
great,
I'm glad I
great.
got
Yeah.
a chance to talk about it here. So the book is been out. It was out since October.
Yeah.
Any thoughts like once it's written and any thoughts of like, oh, I would have done, or I should have added this, or I could have added that, and
Yeah.
now that I'm thinking about it,
Oh, yeah.
any of that going on in your head right now?
Well, yeah. I took a lot of things out really because editors said, "Oh no, that's too political." That's this that. I kind of would have liked to have a little bit more history. Several people have really appreciated the the history that I weave in.
Nice.
And I could have had more history, and there's certainly so much history in Chicago, as there is everywhere. It's there's Native American history, and then there's the early part of the city and industrial history, and oh my gosh, it just goes on and on. So, yeah, a
Yeah.
little bit more history, I guess. Yeah, yeah, would have been
Okay.
nice. Yeah.
Do you see yourself doing another similar type of book in a different location or the same area but a different focus?
I've thought about walking in other cities, and I have. I've walked through Indianapolis, and I've walked through part of Milwaukee. I've walked through my hometown of Marion, Indiana, and I've written about them. And I think I could do some more of that because I think it's an interesting subject to kind of, and I think people, I'm inviting people walk through your cities, see what it's like to actually experience your city on the ground, and so maybe I'll do more of that. But I love long distance walking in places in Europe where you can go in through cities and then into natural areas or farmlands. I really love those kinds of mixtures of cities and then into other areas. That's I have to think about where I want to walk, first, rather than what I want to write about.
Right.
So,
Okay. So you
yeah,
just touched on something of if someone listening to us thinks they'd like to do something like this, like get
yeah.
out on a walk and make it more than just the walk. Make like what could they, like what creativity could come out of it, whether it's writing or something. Like what advice would you give someone like
Oh
who
yeah,
wants to do something
I
like that?
would, I would, do a little investigation of where you would kind of like to go, and as we've talked, set an intention about it. Like, well, I'm doing this for my late mother, and I'm gonna walk to where she grew up, or make some kind of a pilgrimage out of it, something important about it that you kind of want to do it for your own your own spiritual, I would say, sensibility, that this is an important area that I want to experience on the ground. And
Okay.
I think that would be good to take away. And maybe you take pictures, or maybe you uh, you know uh, tell other people about it, or the fact that you just do it for yourself and your family members or whatever. I think people appreciate that you're making pilgrimages, and you can share it with other people just by telling the story. So many people have walking stories, as you know. I mean, my gosh, there's That's one of the things I'm trying to do now is to do some workshops on getting people to either write, just in journals, or just tell the story of various walks in their life, because I think they're very telling and they're very important and powerful.
Wow, that's great.
As you know, and
Yeah,
you're doing a good job of inviting me on here to tell my walking story.
absolutely. But thank you for that. So I'm talking to Michael McColly. His book, Walking Chicago's Coast, a 63-mile journey to the Indiana Dunes. It's a fascinating topic, walking and then tying it to something greater than just, a man going out to get in shape. It's something bigger that Michael covers. Mike, I love the advice that you just gave. I think it's a great way to wind down the episode. Any closing thoughts you'd like to tell the audience?
I explore where you live, because I think, we live, we're creatures of where we are. I don't care, if sometimes people, oh, this is my home city and I grew up here, my parents, but everywhere we go, we're really creatures of that place. And I think if we walk, we then really connect to the environment and to the neighborhood, and we need to do that as humans. We really, it's for our health and civic health and environmental health, really. More walking, the healthier we all are.
Fantastic. Well, that's a great way to. You're a great advocate for walking and the process of what it does to us and help us expand and grow. So, Michael, thank you. Thank you for being. I haven't had a guest on in a while, so thank you for being the first guest. It was great talking to you. Great conversation with you. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Frank.
And before we wrap up, I want to speak directly to the men listening and to anyone who loves these men. If you're 45 or younger with a family history of prostate cancer, please talk to your doctor about getting your PSA levels checked. A simple blood test started me on a path that ultimately saved my life. Early detection gives you options. Ignoring it does not. And if you or someone you care about is facing prostate cancer diagnosis, I want you to know this: you're not alone. I've walked this road from the shock of the diagnosis, through the treatment, the fatigue, the fear, the uncertainty, and I've come out the other side more optimistic about life than ever before. That experience has reshaped my purpose. This has been the most rewarding work I've done in my life. If you'd like to know what it looks like to work with me, whether you need support, a framework for staying active through treatment, or just someone who understands what you're going through, you can email me directly at frank@walkingforhealthandfitness.com. Reach out, ask the questions, get the test, take the next step for your health, for your future, and for the people who love you. This is Frank. Walk on.